Welcome to another round of Courageous Conversation, and we are glad to still have Pastor Mark Zschech with us, who is the global pastor of Hope UC, who have churches in Australia, in US, and in India. And as we were talking, we decided to do another video on courage. Pastor Mark had ideas about how we can be people of courage, and we can look at some of the biblical examples and biblical models. So, Pastor Mark, can you just share your thoughts around how do we understand courage and what are some of the biblical models that we can follow?
Well, thank you for that question. I love the format of this video, Courageous Conversations. We're talking about how do you have courage? And again, obviously, I think our great example is always looking to God's Word to take our framework, our references, what we can learn. There's a couple of examples. When I think about courage, I think about good courage. I think about bad courage. And of course, if you've been around, if you're my age, you might have even heard of an expression called Dutch courage. I don't know whether that's a relevant expression in India. It comes from the World War I, where when the Dutch were fighting England, they were across each other in the trenches, and they were in a stalemate situation. And so what the Dutch leaders did was they provided a lot of alcohol to their soldiers, and that they would then be quite rowdy and jump up out of the trench and literally scare the British soldiers.
Right.
And so this idea of Dutch courage is a phrase that has been around a little bit. And so it implies this idea that you need an outside force to come into you to actually show some sort of bravery. And basically what it's doing is it's numbing the fear, this alcohol. So this idea of Dutch courage, but we're not here to talk about that. What I want to emphasize is really about good courage or bad courage. When David fought Goliath, there's a great example there and a great picture, I think, about these two different ideas, good courage, bad courage. I mean, David turns up to the battlefield where his brothers are. King Saul is there. They're all lined up. They're in their tents. They're going, it says that they get ready for battle every day. They go to the battlefield. Goliath comes out, yells and shouts to them, and they all retreat in fear. Where David turns up and says, hey, this guy is saying bad things about my God and about our nation. And you can feel the energy rising in the so-called shepherd boy. And he goes to Saul and goes to his brothers and say, hey, who's that guy and what should we do? And eventually he goes to Saul and says, I want to take on the giant. And Saul says, hey, try the armor on, all of these things. It didn't work. And so he goes out into the battle and throws his stones and knocks over the giant and uses the giant's sword, cuts the giant's head off, and he's the hero of the day. David is showing incredible courage in this situation. The shepherd boy, came down to deliver the cheese and crackers to his brothers, and yet he's the one who wins the day for the nation. In this moment, you can hear David and you can read the narrative where he says, look, this battle doesn't faze me because actually I've killed the lion and the bear before with my own bare hands when they stole the sheep. So courage, I believe, gets built in different battles, in different situations where we take on challenges, we face them, and we actually win. So again, this idea of, I think it's a healthy thing for us as leaders, as Christians, to be willing to engage in different challenges in our life, because every time we take on a challenge, we overcome the challenge, courage actually gets put in. So he actually faces the bear, faces the lion, and then turns up and actually faces the giant. Now, in that same context, there is a whole army of people, his brothers included, and the king of the day, who actually didn't go into battle. Now, interestingly, they got dressed for battle. They were at the location of the battle, and they went out every morning to look like they were in the battle. But actually, David was the only one that was really in the battle. See, bad courage is about going through the motions, but never actually facing the giant. I mean, he also tried to use financial gain as a way to motivate those soldiers by saying, hey, if you take on the giant, you won't have to pay any tax. You get to marry the king's daughter. You're going to get to be called a special person. But of course, my thinking in this situation is it's a very low way of motivating people by what they get out of it. David, he went into battle. I mean, the Bible talks about he asked a few questions, but fundamentally, the motivation for him to take on the giant was that Goliath was saying terrible things about his God. That was his primary motivation. Again, you can face any battle, I believe, if you go, hey, this is not right. This injustice is not right. Well, of course, then if God is into injustice, he will also be working on your behalf. So again, this is the place where we should show good courage. We shouldn't look at injustice and go, this is someone else's problem to solve. We should use this as motivation to actually say, I'm going to fix this one way or another. Not by what I get out of it, not by the kudos I get out of it, not by how I'll be esteemed by my colleagues or by the king, but actually we need to come back to David's methodology. Good courage, which he says, God, I'm going to fight and defend God's reputation. So again, there's so many examples in this story about good courage, bad courage. And again, whatever you do, don't get motivated or don't get courage from external influences. Have something deep inside of you where you say, I'm willing to take on this battle. I'm willing to actually fight for God's kingdom because this is the right thing to do. Good courage or bad courage, I pray that everybody is motivated by good courage.